alaikum, everybody. This is Zeba Hassan with Momming While Muslim on this special back to school episode. As you can see, we have another Z name, which I'm going to introduce in a little bit, and my co-host, a beautiful co-host, Uzma Jafri, who is in Portland right now. So, like, she's even further away from me than we normally are. So, Uzma, do you
Portland,
want to?
Oregon, not Portland, Maine.
Oh, that's why are we so confused?
I
Okay,
don't know
this
why
is what
we have
happens.
two of the same city.
Why do we
We're
have two of the
Americans,
same
though.
city? But that's a whole nother podcast. We'll talk about that later. But I wanted to take a moment to introduce Zainab Fazal of the Behavior Company, and I want her to actually start us off by telling us a little bit about what her company does. I am gonna forgive her that she spelled behavior with like the English way versus the American way.
Oh, you
So I'm just
are.
gonna, I'm so, because I was like, why is this not pulling up? I'm like, oh,
It
she
totally
tricked
threw
me
me
and
off too. And I was
added,
like,
she threw me
oh,
off.
she's
But
from the
why don't you
north.
start a little bit and tell us why you put the U in there and what you guys do at the Behavior Company? And, welcome to Momming While Muslim. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you,
thank
Zainab.
you. Thanks for having me on here. And I'll start with that explanation. It's because I'm in Toronto, Canada, and we
Okay,
have
that's why.
American English. So everywhere here, and it's funny that you bring that up because I teach part-time at one of the colleges in behavioral psychology here. And any of my students who don't spell it with the U, they get dinged for that because I'm like, yo, we're in Canada.
What are you,
Oh,
an American?
snap.
So yeah,
Snap. I appreciate that.
yeah, so that's the reasoning. So based in Toronto, Canada, we do provide services internationally though, because virtual world. Um, and we provide a number of different services, everything in behavior analysis. So whether it's working with children with a developmental disability, mental health issue, a psychiatric disorder, youth, as well as adults. I do a lot of staff training as well for mental health agencies, psychiatric, anyone providing anything in human services, really. Because what we do is human behavior. And we look at how do you improve somebody's quality of life? How do you improve staff's quality of life when they're frontline working with really some challenging behaviors and stuff. So again, just services for children, youth, and adults, families as well, and agencies.
I definitely appreciate it, and we're going to get back to you in a minute, and to ask you a little bit of your expertise about back to school, because as you know, there is a lot of stuff, a lot of anxieties for the people that have already gone back to school and seeing some of the closings happening for the people like myself that are starting next week. So part of why I even wanted to do this is because it's going to ease my own anxiety. So I'm going to be learning on the go, like with everybody else. And Hot Hijab has kind of tasked us to bring this to the front line. So we wanted to thank them for that as well, because we're going to be putting this up in write-up form on the Hot Hijab blog coming out next week. But Uzma, do you want to start us off with, as you do so amazingly, what are the current COVID stats? What can we do to medically keep our children safe as they're either going back to school or they've already gone back to school?
Well, I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So, what we've noted in the last month is a 14% increase of COVID infections just throughout the United States. So, that's significant. We're talking tens of thousands of people getting COVID right now. And so, what we are seeing, especially in the month of August, what we noted is that pediatric hospitalizations with COVID bumped up. Now, even though the CDC is reporting adults that are hospitalized only, states are some are reporting kids that are infected, and some are reporting kids that are infected, and then on top of that, kids that are hospitalized. So it really, we're at the mercy of the states. And that brings us to what's happening in the schools, right? Because, um, I'm kind of embarrassed to be saying this in front of Zainab because in the United States, we have like, state independence, and we try to say we have state autonomy, and the states are responsible for what public schools are going to do. So we only had in July like 10 states that were mandating masks, but where we're seeing the highest pediatric cases right now, which is the southeastern belt of the United States, so Louisiana, Florida, Texas. Texas is fairly southeast, but it's, there's some southeasterness there. So those pediatric cases are really high because the adult vaccination rates are among the lowest in the country. And so what we're finding is that that belief, that hope that we had on herd immunity doesn't just protect the adults and those older adults that we were worried about and those minority populations that we were worried about who are higher risk. It also protects our children. Um, Last year, we fully believed and endorsed, well, not we, me, but everybody else was fully confident that, oh, kids don't get sick. And that means kids don't die of COVID. So it's okay if they get it because this is like a chickenpox party. Let's just let them all have
Mm-hmm.
chickenpox and then they'll be, immune for life. But if you remember, the chickenpox virus stays in your nerves. And then it comes back to
Mm-hmm.
bite you in the ass. Oh, sorry, bite you in the butt later when you're older and then immunocompromised. You get shingles. So the chickenpox parties are not a good idea, guys, because you don't know what's going to happen with this bugger of a disease, especially the Delta variant. And now we have a Lambda variant coming out of South America. So really, do
Mm-hmm.
we want to do this again? Get vaccinated to protect the kids because we're seeing a lot of schools opened up without a contingency plan. So there's no virtual school
Mm-hmm.
possible. So if they shut down and you go home, you go home. Some of these private schools are doing it that I've heard of, and it's great because your tuition is gone because you have to pay ahead. You have to pay the whole year up front, and it's gone. And there's no virtual school, and the parents are up in arms right now. For the public schools, what's happening is I think one of the largest counties out of Florida, Duval County, 10,000 kids are in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
10,000 kids out of school for 2 weeks. And yeah, they're saying all these great things to kind of put a band aid on it. Like, we're not going to count that against your absences for the school. Dude,
Yeah, but you're
you
still not
shouldn't. You better not.
learning. And you're
No, but
still
they
not
better not
learning
count it
during
as
that
absences
time.
because we're absent because you're not mandating masks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have certain governors that are threatening to penalize our public school districts. Yes, I can speak English today. I have to prove it to the North that I can speak English today. That are penalizing public school districts for actually mandating masks. So right now, it's just very sporadic. The district that my kids would have gone to, were they in school in a building, has just mandated masks as well. But they're primarily like where we think there's more red pockets, like in Texas and Florida and Louisiana, and even in my state out in Arizona, parents can submit a letter, a form, and say that we opt out of your mandatory mask mandate. Then it's not a
Mm.
mandatory mask mandate if you're giving them an option to opt out. Like, it shouldn't be. We know that masks work. You know this very well, Zeba. I know this because we both recently had colds and our bodies were down for the count because we didn't know how to react to it. Masks work. And on an episode a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, a small study that came out from November to February out of education centers. Oh gosh, do you remember what state it was?
It wasn't Florida. I can tell
Oh,
you
it was out of
what
San
it wasn't.
Francisco, California. Yeah. So
Right.
they were those like day centers where parents were dropping their kids off. And even though only 60% of the students and staff masked and they had no filtration system, they did keep the doors and windows open, they did sanitize, and they did maintain social distancing. One teacher transmitted COVID to another teacher. Small sample, it was only like 1,200 people, but it was in an educational setting. It was in one of these little incubator type situations, and it wasn't over an insignificant period of time. Isn't it worth a trial for the safety of our children and the sake of our children to maybe do the same? Maybe let's just test it from like August to January and see what happens, and provide that data rather than losing all of these kids to infection or just sitting at home quarantining while they're waiting, um, you know to get back into school. It's really a shame. We can do better. I know that you and I discussed at the beginning of August that, if you want like actual numbers, Massachusetts has something like a 60% vaccination adult
Mm-hmm.
vaccination rate. Louisiana and Florida had like 40 something at the time. However, there was only a few hundred children infected with COVID in Massachusetts, 1,600 in Louisiana, 9,000 out of Florida. So it just goes to, I mean, you just have to look at the math. Okay,
Do the math,
let's not even
people.
bring science into it. It's a mathematical correlation. We think, you know, it just makes sense. And it's such an easily changeable thing. The other thing that I think parents are really worried about is getting their kids under 12 vaccinated. I know that
Mm-hmm.
many parents are pulling their kids under 12 out of school because they're walking in and they're seeing that there's no masks. They're hearing that 7 kids in their class got infected and now their kid is out. So it's just an up and down. There's no stability, there's no routine in the kids. And we know that we work so hard as moms to create that kind of safe environment and secure routine for them to make them feel like, okay, I know what's coming next. And Zainab's going to talk about why that's important, I'm sure. Um, what they're asking is how soon can we get this vaccine? And we think it'll be sometime in the
Mm-hmm.
fall for kids under 12. Sadly, we just, it's not going to be
Don't
released
know.
yet. But the good news is that right now, immunocompromised people, because we are seeing some vaccinated people getting COVID, right? It's like a very small percentage, but we're finding that they're primarily immunocompromised people. There are like 6 categories of those that can get the booster right now. You can go right now to your pharmacy or your grocery store and you can get it. As of September 20th, those of us who were, in the 1As and we got vaccinated as healthcare workers and frontline workers, we're going to be able to get it as of September 20th. So I highly, highly recommend, if you love somebody, call them and tell them to get their COVID booster right now. Because when it comes to September 20th, those of us who are on the front line are going to run. I tried to get it now, and like my grocery store turned me away. They're like, no, you have to wait until September 20th because you're not immunocompromised. Um, but yeah, it'll run out. So let's get our grandmas, grandpas, anybody who's on any kind of chemotherapy, biologic therapy, because again, when they get it and they're protected, then they're not going to pass it on to the younger folks either. Because before we were keeping the kids away from the elders because we were afraid of them hurting the elders. Now it's the opposite way. And so we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be the reason that our kids are dying, they're suffering. Now we are the reason our kids can't be in school. Remember last year how we complained about how, oh my gosh, like I'm a short order cook, the laundress, the chauffeur, the entertainer, the teacher now. Well, we brought this on ourselves. So let's just be smart, get our vaccines as adults, get our boosters if you're immunocompromised. Make sure your schools are masking, guys. It's going to be that if your district is not mandating it, then all of your PTSAs, let's band the moms together because we know that moms make heads roll. Let's just make the masks roll out for now.
So we're talking about getting you're vaccinated if you're not, getting the boosters if you're eligible. For people that are immunocompromised, they can go now. For a frontline worker, September 20th. And I would imagine for people after that, it'll come out and pray that there's going to be a booster for the 10, 12 and under, praying and wear a mask. It's annoying. You have to smell your bad breath sometimes. You can't wear lipstick, which is why I'm not even bothering. But guess what? In the broader scheme of life, I have 2 at home that cannot be vaccinated. I'm trying to keep them as safe as possible. So, Zainab, I definitely appreciate some of what you're doing because a lot of the things that the parents are worried about, separate and apart from the health aspect, which has been so nicely talked about, is kind of like, my kids can be anxious. I'm nervous about going to school. We've now it took them a while to kind of get adjusted to the new normal. Now we're going back to this old normal with a whole bunch of variants, including the Delta variant out there that they're a little bit nervous about. What are some of the things that we as parents can look for to recognize some of these signs? And please help a mama out. How can we help them cope during this very stressful time?
Right. Okay, so I'm just going to start with saying, like, we're all anxious about it, right? So it's not just our
Mm-hmm.
kids, moms, dads, grandparents, everyone is anxious because it's unpredictable. It's uncharted territory. We don't know what's going on. I've got some supervisees actually who work in the States, and one's in Louisiana at a chartered school. So I hear a lot, right? Every time in supervision, she's sharing what's going on. They're going virtual, they're not. It's mandated, it's not. And I'm like, what are you all doing down there? Although here in Canada, and specifically in Ontario where I am, it's sometimes just as messy and chaotic, right? So yeah, it's anxiety provoking for all of us. So I just want to say it's normal to be anxious, first of all, as a parent. And it's normal to a certain extent if your child is anxious or nervous or scared during this situation. If they weren't, I would be worried as well. So let me start with some of the things that I want the listeners to keep an eye out for as a parent. And, we know our kids best all the time. So if something feels off, it probably is off. So don't ignore the mom gut or the dad gut, right? But
Yes.
don't ignore that instinctual thing that's put inside us as parents. To pay attention if something feels off, it might just be. Okay, so some symptoms, another caveat before I get into symptomology is there's a difference. There's depressive symptoms, there's anxiety symptoms, and then there's diagnosable like anxiety disorder or depression, for example, that's clinically diagnosable. And there's a difference between the two. So sometimes your child will show some of those symptoms, and it doesn't mean your child has a diagnosable anxiety disorder, but it can still mean that they're struggling with anxiety. They're both equally important, right? It just means that we might be looking at a different treatment model if somebody has a diagnosed anxiety disorder. Okay, so some of the things for parents to look out for: excessive worry that occurs all the time. Like, it's not just a once a day or once every few days, once a week. It's like constantly throughout the day. I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. So excessive worry is what we're looking for there. Hyperarousal, and that can include something like palpitations or sweating. Some of the things that I hear from my anxiety patients is I'm getting, the hot sweats where I'm like, I'm really hot, but I'm sweating, and it feels weird, but I'm cold, and it's changing. So there's this hyperarousal that shows up physiologically. Muscle tension and restlessness. Keep in mind, some of the little kiddos might not be able to like verbally identify what that feels or looks like. So we kind of keep an eye out for what's happening in their body, right? Are they twitching more? Are they moving their legs? Are they doing different things that doesn't seem quite right? Are they grabbing a part of their body constantly? Fatigue. I've got 2 teenagers at home, so one going to grade 8 and one going to grade 11. And let me tell you, sleep schedules out the window when this thing hit. Like, I go to bed, I'm an old mom, and I'm like, I need to sleep on time, I need to wake up on time. They stay awake till I don't know what o'clock, right? And when they finally wake up during the day, I'm like, so what time did you go sleep? At 5 a.m. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to fix that come 1 to 2 weeks. Our school doesn't start till September 7th. So I got a little bit more time than most of you guys do in the US. But once your sleep schedule and routine is in place, and please allow for a few weeks of that, right? Like, let's not be military. We've been doing COVID back and forth, virtual school, no school, in-person school, all this chaos for over 1.5 years now, that let's not be military in terms of like making sure that they're in bed and it works after day 1. Like, they're going to need some time to like ease into the new school schedule. Now, once they're into that schedule, if fatigue persists, that's an issue. If there's fatigue initially, I wouldn't be too concerned, okay? Excessive irritability, like everything irritates them to an extent where they can't cope, control, or even understand their own feelings and emotions. Constant headaches is another one to look out for. Difficulty focusing, you might notice this as a parent, you might not, but the teacher might report that. So something to look out for there. Excessive sleep disturbances. So after you've worked at setting up a kind of predictable routine, sleep schedule and stuff, are they sleeping too much? Or are they sleeping too little? And again, when we're thinking about, and physiologically, they might complain a lot about feeling nauseous or cramps in their tummy, right? So abdominal cramping is a common one. Again, we're not so worried if we see one of these signs, right? It's combination of these, and then do they last for a really long time? The other thing to kind of look out for, which is unique, and again, parents are their children's experts, is new, so novel or really more intense behaviors. So the meltdowns your kids were having before, are they happening more often? Are they lasting longer? What they do during these meltdowns, do they look and sound very different? Are they getting angry really quickly for a long time? Are they hurting themselves? Are they hurting others? Are they breaking things? Are they like pounding on, their desk a little bit more? So we're looking for novel and kind of the excessive behavior. So these massive changes where, a lot of parents will come to me and be like, it's not the same kid. And I'm like, he's still the same kid. He's just going through stuff right now, whether it's developmentally plus the pandemic, all of these things are going on. They're going through major changes physiologically in their brain. All this stuff is going on. Throw in a pandemic on top of that. Yeah, it's going to be anxiety provoking. So again, parents want to look for a combination of different things going on, not just one thing that's going on. And you definitely want to seek out some support and help if it's lasting for, like, I would give it a good 2 weeks from when school starts and see what's happening then. And if it goes beyond that, that might be reason to contact a professional. Okay, so those are kind of a quick list of things that parents can keep an eye out for. And I would be remiss if I didn't actually talk about what you can do as a parent, because I know that.
Well, the
We
one thing I
really-
do want to specify, since we do have a large portion of our population have younger kids, and sometimes those anxious things don't come off in these traditional ways. They'll say things like, "Oh, my stomach hurts," or "Oh, I'm this," or "Oh, I'm that." And right now, as we know with COVID, if they sneeze too much, they're going to be sent home. Okay, so it is something for us to be thoughtful about, and if they're complaining a little bit or having, my boys, poop issues, when they can't either poop too much or don't poop at all, something to keep track of in addition to all the things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and I've
even
noticed some
all
hypochondriasis, in the tweens, where things that ordinarily would not bother them now suddenly, oh, like I have this random pain in this one region of their bodies that really, it would be a lot of acrobatics to hurt yourself over there. But like this hypervigilance that you were talking about, the hyperexcitability, I think, is what you were talking about. I've noticed a lot of hypervigilance regarding their health. So things like, what is the spot on my skin, and such and so forth. And then with the little ones, also, if they're suddenly asking to sleep with you all the time, I think that could be things to look out for. If they're just out of the blue, all of a sudden, like, okay, I think it's a good time to start exploring. Hey, honey, what's on your mind? Why do you feel like you have to sleep with me? Or hey, honey, how come like all these spots that wouldn't have bothered you otherwise are bothering you right now? So like, feel free to open those conversations. And yes, if they're going on for more than 3 weeks, we really probably should have somebody with more degrees than us, more alphabet soup, talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and all of these things show up differently, like you guys were talking about, at different ages, right? So it's again just us knowing what some of those things, the like typical symptomology is, and then how it shows up in my kid, and how it shows up I got 2 boys, right? So between the 13-year-old and the 16-year-old, totally different. They're both boys, they're both teenagers, they live in, like, there's so many variables that are the same, but they're different kids, and developmentally they've got different language repertoires, or they've got different ways of expressing it or showing it. One kid kind of goes in himself, the other kid shows it really loudly, right? So looking at what are these differences when you're like, my kid is different, something's up, right? And again, going back to that mom gut, like instinctually we know when something's wrong with our babies, right? And my 16-year-old still my baby, and I know, right? Like, he's taller and bigger than me, but I know, so.
Yeah.
And they still look to you for guidance. So what is it that
For
we
sure.
as parents can do in a situation that's not a tangible thing? How can we help them ease some of their fears and anxieties for what is to come, or what we perceive is to come, because we actually do not know.
Yeah. So I got 3 things that I tell like every parent, and I practice myself as a parent as well, and I'll go through each of these. Number 1, listen and validate. I cannot stress this enough. And number 2 is make sure, so listen and validate. It's really, really important to take care of yourself as well. And then show them your struggle and show them your coping, right? Like, I feel like a lot of parents tend to hide that they're anxious or that they're scared or that they don't know. Like, I rewind back Friday, March 13th, 2020, almost all of the agents, not almost all, every single agency that I was consulting to, I got an email or a phone call. We're stopping in person, which means consultants can't come in. I had literally just left a boardroom training like 35 staff on behavior management, and I got that. And then one after the other, call after email. I was freaking out. I was like, uh-oh, I don't know what to do, right? Kids' school is out and this is happening and our mosque closed and like one thing after the other. And again, I think we need to show our kids that, A, I don't know what's going on. I don't have all the answers. I'm scared too, right? But then show them the coping strategies as well. So let me rewind back because I can talk about this stuff all the time. So number one, listen and validate. It's so important for you to be their safe space, right? They need to be able to come to you. And, Uzma, you were saying that, a child might come and sleep with you and they haven't slept with you in, 2 years, for example, right? That's your kind of cue to be like, hey, let me probe a little bit here and see what's up with my kiddo. Right. And then whatever they say, listen and validate. I think that, maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe it's a generational thing. I'm not quite sure. But I know in our community, sometimes we're very quick to brush their feelings under the rug. Oh, don't worry, but I'll be fine. Right? Or like, don't worry about this. Oh, no, it'll be fine. And we do a lot of that. And I think that, that really minimizes their thoughts, their feelings, their fears, and then they internalize it. And that's when it gets bigger. That beast gets really, really big inside them. So it's really important to listen and validate. Don't use stuff like, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Really? Because everything's going to be fine, right?
I
As
don't.
adults, right? As adults, as Muslims, I think for me at my age, having 2 kids, gone through life up to now and stuff, I have a lot of faith in God, right? But if I were to just say that to my 16-year-old, like, don't worry, God's got this, right? And he does have this, but God's not tangible to him yet. And he can't see that. And it's not like we're going to say God doesn't have it. But I feel like if that's your only sentence you're using, don't worry, it'll be okay. Don't worry, God has it. Any of that don't worry followed by anything else, it really minimizes what they're feeling. So it is scary. And babe, I don't know what the answer is. It's humbling as a parent to be like, I don't know. Like, his schedule's coming out and he's got 160 or 150 minute classes. And he's like, do I have to sit for that long? Do I have to wear my mask for that long? Do I get a break? Can I go pee? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Are they going to shut down again? I don't know. But what I do know, kid, is whatever they decide, we're going to figure it out together. And it's okay to feel kind of crappy, or it's okay to feel scared. Like, just let's normalize and let's validate their feelings and be that safe place, right? So we want to reassure them in whatever way you can, but don't be unrealistic. So none of this don't worry, none of this brush it under the rug stuff, because that really does. The worst thing is, like I was saying, is they internalize it. And that's what we don't want them to do. Okay. One of the other ways you can help when your kids are starting school, or if there are anxiety around that, is acknowledge and celebrate small victories. Like, everything matters, and it doesn't matter how old they are. So if they come into the car, first, second, third day of school, and they're hangry, make sure you got snacks there, and they're livid and they're like, hate everything about everything. Okay. And then one day they come in and say, hey, mom, guess what? And they share something really cool. Celebrate it. Celebrate it huge, right? So for some kids, going to school at all might be anxiety provoking. So you might not be sending your kids to school. So normalize that. You might be choosing virtual, or you might come up with a transition plan. We're doing that with a lot of families where they're starting with just a little bit of school. So they're going for first period and then getting picked up. And then eventually they'll kind of build up. So that's another way, if that's allowable. I know school districts and everything's different, but transitioning slowly might be something that your child needs. Does your school have the option to do half day in person and half day virtual? Right? So kind of explore and look at what are some of those ways. And as they transition into full-time school, for example, celebrate them. Celebrate that they did one period. Who cares if they didn't do the rest? Celebrate that they woke up and showered and got dressed that day, right? So it's just everything that's happening, every kind of any positive move they make or statement they make, let's celebrate those things as well. Certainly take care of yourself. I think, Zeba, you might be talking a little bit more about that as well. But self-care, I always tell parents, right? It's that thing that you hear on the airplanes all the time. Put your mask on before you put on the other person's mask. Every single time. Can't take care of them if you don't take care of you. So, and then finally, that modeling piece is so, so very important. So if you're getting worked up, if you're feeling anxious, and if you have a whole bunch of stuff going on, talk to them about it. Tell them that you are, and be like, I'm just going to do a little bit of my breathing right now because mom is going to lose it, right? Or I think I'm going to go for a walk because that's going to help me cool down because I don't have the answers. Or today was really tough. Or whatever that reason is, like whatever your trigger was that day, share that with kids, right? I like to model. There's all these different types of breathing techniques. My preference is the 4-7-8 breathing. So you can like look it up. There's square breathing. There's so many different kinds. But 4-7-8, which I can't model and talk at the same time, but it's mouth closed. Breathe in through your nose for 4. Hold for 7. Big breath out for 8. And kind of practice this with your kiddos and just say when you feel like everything's up in a knot or it's like tingly inside or you can't feel like you can't breathe properly, try your 4-7-8 breathing, right? Because we know that it calms your nervous system down. And that's what we want to do when somebody's feeling anxious, is you want to calm the nervous system down. So, kind of putting some of those practices in place, showing your kid that you're doing some of those practices is super important. Showing your kids that you acknowledge that some of these yucky feelings are coming up for you and that it's okay. And mommy's scared too, or mommy has no idea, or this was really crappy today, right? And this feels yucky. Acknowledging that it comes up, showing them that you can move on and then do something proactive about it. That's awesome. That's what our kids need to see, right? Because mommy's doing it. Oh, it worked for her. Let me try it next time. And stuff. So I could go on and on and on and be mindful of our timing and stuff too.
No, I absolutely love it because pretty much like a lot of what parents do, which it sounds like you're recommending for their kids as well, is to do that. The first thing, like I always tell people, is when I'm helping parents, it's one, you have to focus on self-care. And a lot of parents think, oh, I'm being selfish, or I'm being this, it's actually selfish to not focus on yourself, to not take that break, to not read, like Uzma, I'm gonna show her, finish my book. I'm finally finishing the 3rd book in the trilogy. I'm escaping to do that. It's literally doing things as a parent, like you said, with the oxygen mask. But really, if your cup is empty of water, you can't give anybody else, you can't quench anybody else's thirst. So that's the number one thing that I tell parents. Honestly, when back to school starts, we were kind of like the queens and the kings of no schedules, but we're going to need a couple of schedules. These are just some practical things. Predictability for this age is extremely important, and we know that. Start having conversations with your children now, like what my kids need to know. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to pick you up at this time. Have their input into the schedules, because guess what? You're going to get buy-in from them when they're involved. This goes for your 5-year-old starting kindergarten to my senior in high school, who was literally like, I can't find my this and I can't find my that. I'm like, remember when we put the little file folder thing right by the front back door? All your forms that you need are going to go there. They have to just kind of get back into those routines. All those little things really help ease that anxiety for parents. And like you said, if we're anxious, our kids are going to pick up on that. That is the truth. That's been scientifically proven. So why not do what you can do to help that? I love your 4-7-8 breathing. We do the Subber app. I'm flat out admitting that. We love it. I tell everybody about it. My kids have them on their phones. It's essentially a meditation app from an Islamic perspective, because of course we're Muslim and that's what we like to do. And the breathing techniques really, really help. It's a tangible tool that they can use, you can use when you're not with each other. Another thing I tell my kids too is journal. My anxious children, I have 2 out of 4, They journal, and it's so cute. They have the notes in the front. Please do not read this. Quite
Aw.
frankly, it's a normal notebook, right? Nobody would have read it except when you put that sign on it. But it's funny because right before bed, those anxious thoughts start coming. Having it be put onto paper is something that a parent can do for themselves and do for their kids as well. So that's something. There's a question. When I take time for myself, I feel like I have more catch up as if things pile up. This is, I think, a very common things that parents, mothers specifically, because we do wear multiple hats. Not that dads don't, but let's just be honest, we wear a couple of more hats than our dads do. But if you're not, think about it on a day that you're super sleepy or you're super fatigued and you're like, oh, I have to do this. You're not doing any of those things well if you don't recharge your battery. It doesn't matter. So yeah, those things will get caught up that in another day, if you were well rested or you were well taken care of, those same tasks would take half the time to do. So charging your battery as parents, as mothers, is very important. And quite frankly, you're also teaching your child through modeling, like Zainab said, of self-care and prioritizing your boundaries. That is not a selfish thing. And quite frankly, in the long term, it'll be very, very helpful for people. Remember, Zainab talked a little bit about recognizing the signs of anxiety. Give your kids the language to describe some of the feelings, right? That's something, and it seems like you're being weird or kitschy, or when your kids are saying, my stomach is hurting, why is your stomach hurting? That could be anxiety. When they have a tangible name, they can start, it's like name it to tame it. I think there's a book that we get for our kids. When you can name the feeling, the anxious, angry, sad feeling, you're giving them the empowerment to be able to handle that as well, right? So allowing them to feel it, giving them the name, and helping them tame it are definitely things that you can help with your kids. Give them a safe space after school. And for teenagers like Zainab and Uzma and I have, that means, guess what? You're not talking to them. You're not making eye contact for them. You're giving them food and you're giving them the space that they need to come to you with their grunts and their this and their that's and their that. So let them have that space. Give them the time to decompress. We need time to decompress when we come home. So giving them that opportunity also helps ease that back to school. Don't inundate them with questions. How was this? How was this? How was this? Where did you go? What did you do this? Because then that makes them feel more anxious. And when you decide, it's like, can you imagine somebody giving you the third degree? Like as soon as you walk through the door, like you're like, let me get my shoes
How'd you do with that patient?
off.
How many people did you kill?
Exactly. You're like, I don't want to answer that. So give them the time, the space. And when you do have conversations, right? Let them direct the conversation. And then you ask specific, non-open-ended questions, not say, how was your day? And then be surprised when they're like, it's fine. But really 50,000 things happened and they don't want to share that with you right now. So those are all just things that you can be, a little bit mindful of. Take them outside. Outdoor time is key. And I know you're in 100-degree weather, Uzma, it's not the best. And I don't know how the weather is for you in Toronto, but even if it's 15 minutes and you're just in the sun and you're just letting them run around like crazy, even the older kids, they need that physical time in the sun. And guess what? Give yourself grace because it might not work out. We might be closed in December, but guess what? God made us resilient and we're going to get through this.
100%.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. And just to add to that question too is one of the things I do in like the parenting groups as well is we talk about value-driven parenting instead of like goal-driven parenting, right? And we all of us have our off days or off moments or off weeks sometimes, right? And
months.
Yeah. And I encourage parents, and don't wait till the end of the day to journal, but like journal when that stuff comes up for you right away. But one of the things to do is just do a check-in about your values throughout your day. When you feel like you're not getting that stuff done, or I didn't do enough today, or if I take time for myself, this, and this that I was supposed to for my children or my partner or my parent, whoever, doesn't get done, and stuff, am I showing up as that value-driven mom that I want to be? Are my kids safe? Did they pray today? Was this taken care of? Was that taken care of from my value-based? And if I can say yes, I'm good. And if that means I didn't get to finish X, Y, Z tasks, it's all good, because I still showed up as that value-driven mom that I've worked so hard to show up as, right? So we work with parents, and I like parents. I encourage parents to think that way, instead of my to-do list for other people, or am I doing something for myself takes away from that to-do list or giving to other people. Are you still showing up as that value-driven mom, right? And are you still taking care of their religion and their body? Like, that's mind, body, soul, spiritual piece as well, for your children. And that's a good way to be like, I'm taking care of my stuff because I value self-care, and I'm still showing up as a value-driven mom and making sure, I was still listening to them, and we still prayed together, and we did these things together, or these things happened, right? So just quick check-ins from a value-based versus I must do for everyone, or this is my to-do list kind of goal-oriented day and lifestyle.
Which is very hard to do when you're on the East Coast. Let me tell you, it's like, how many things can you fit into the day? But from a tangible perspective, when I talk to parents, it's like there are 168 hours in a week, right? When you think about it from that perspective,
Yeah.
you can take 8 of those, which is an hour. No, I'm sorry, 7. I can't even think. I can't even do math. 7 of
I want
those.
that 8-hour week, man. Or 8-day
Maybe
week.
we are saying 8,
I
okay?
need that
You can
8-day
take
week.
7 out of the hundreds to do something for yourself.
Yeah.
When you break it down like that, then people are like, wait a second, I can do that. So if that means you're not volunteering, it's not giving you as much joy, or there's something else, you can find time and space and energy to do it if you want to start prioritizing yourself. By the way, I'm going to start doing that as well. I'm dropping these suckers off and going straight to the gym, because that's my time to do something for myself. And if you put it in your calendar, you're making an appointment for yourself.
For sure. I like that one. Yeah, I do it all the time.
This is like leaps and bounds worth of growth for Zeba, who was like busy putting oxygen on everybody else, oxygen,
And
a warm
dying,
comfy
and then
blanket,
dying
slippers,
in the
and
meantime.
dying. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm really proud of you, Zeba, and I'm really
Thank you.
happy to hear you saying these things.
Because
Good
you
for
have to
Pat on the
practice
back.
what you preach. You have to
Yes,
practice
you're
what you
modeling that
preach,
behavior for your
ladies. I'm
kids,
trying to
too.
model this behavior for my kids because I'm trying to prioritize myself. And the reality of the situation is, it is true. Happy moms. What is it? Happy moms, happy wife, happy life, or happy
It's happy
moms,
wife,
happy
happy life, but we need
kids.
to come up with something kitschier for like happy mom, happy kids.
Okay, I'm going to work on
I'm
that, and then we're going to put it
Yeah,
on a
we'll have to
slogan,
work
and
on
we're going to
something
sell it
catchy.
on our page to raise money for St. Jude's, because that's another whole nother podcast. But I really appreciate everything that you're saying and all your input, and I can't wait to put it into the blog that's going to be hitting the Haute Hijab next week. But where can people find you? Well, in adding the U to the behavior company, but where can people find you on Instagram, Facebook? And we are going to share the links to in our comments of this particular live.
All right, we're all over the place. So our website, behaviorcompany.com. Again, don't forget that U in behavior.
Yes.
I'll give you the link. We've got some free downloads right now too on like recognizing, understanding challenging behavior and what parents can do and stuff. So I'll make sure to share that link with you guys. And then we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, I think. I don't know. We're all over the place. We're everywhere. But if you just search up Behavior Company and make sure you don't forget that you'll find us.
Oh, I love that. And I know we're going to be definitely tapping into some of your wisdom as the unknown becomes a little bit more known in the fall, because I'm still a little bit worried about it. Ask the right questions and try to get the answer. And the other thing is, be an advocate for yourself and for your children. And when in doubt, guess what? You can pull them out and you can unschool them like Uzma does. And she's going to be giving a downloadable also how to help unschool your children if that's the route you want to go. We're going to have that up on our Facebook in our Facebook group, Mommy Well Muslim. And if you want to homeschool, you can. You can have the transitional pieces. Right now, when you're dealing with a pandemic, there are no bad answers, and your kids are going to get caught up. So don't be afraid of that, but you need to be okay so that the kids can be okay.
Yep.
So let's do that.
We're all gonna be fine.
Can we close it out with the 478 breathing as we close
Yeah.
out the show? Because I know I have to go back to school shopping right after this. I'm going to need to get centered in order to do that. So Zainab, can you lead us in our breathing exercise?
All right. So relax your shoulders. Get that tongue.
Shoulders.
Relax your shoulders. Okay. Release your tongue from the roof of your mouth, because that's a very common stressful thing. Unclench your jaw. Close your mouth. There we go. Close your mouth. You're going to breathe in through your nose. So breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And big breath out through the mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh.
I know
I needed
Uzma
that.
has to go hiking with her broken toes. If we were able to hold our breath for that long, I don't have COVID, so I'm super excited about that. And we definitely are going to be looking you up, Zainab, at thebehaviorcompany.com with a U. And we are super excited and very thankful for you to be on the show today. I'll be having all the write-ups next week. So thank you for joining us on this special episode of Back to School, Dealing with Anxiety in the Pandemic.
Awesome. Thanks.